everyone. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about with this chapter. More than anything, we end up learning not only about the full details of Kuma's history, but also the truth about God Valley itself. And I want to start with Kuma, and how it correlates with a very real theory I heard, because as we see, Kuma, from the moment he was born, was a slave due to his heritage of being from the Buccaneer race, a clan of people who are basically like the pretty much in between of giants. They're not as big as giants, but they're not as at the size of regular people either. And the thing about the Buccaneer race is their very folklore and worship is tied to that of Nika. So this is where the crux of the theory comes into play, which is to say, I think from the very beginning of the series, or I guess if you want to get technical about it, from the moment he was introduced, Kuma's been playing the long game. Every action he's taken has been for the sake of seeing Joy Boy, aka Nika's, return to the world of men. And because of that, I think he knew. He knew about the true nature of the Gum Gum fruit, and by proxy of Luffy eating the fruit. He knew that by proxy of Luffy eating the fruit, he knew that he had become the new Nika, which in itself, I believe, is the core reason why he asked Vegapunk to implant him with those final orders to protect the Straw Hats and the Sunny. Even the story of him separating the crew to protect them and force them to get stronger was kind of bunk when you ultimately look at Kuma's whole story in the grand scheme of things, because the one Kuma was protecting in that whole situation was Luffy. Like, out of all the Straw Hats, he needed Luffy to survive the most and to get stronger, because Luffy was the one who inherited Nika's legacy. And honestly, just learning the stuff we do about the folklore of Nika being tied to the Buccaneer clan, again, kind of feeds into what I said last week about this power being more than just a devil fruit. Like, the only question that remains is what kind of power this is, whether it's the origin of devil fruits or something else. And again, it has me again, which has me to believe it is some kind of like godlike power, like something, by the way, like that Jay Garcia talks about humans in this chapter. Again, I'm inclined to believe it is some kind of godlike power, or maybe even more so than anything. And more than anything, I really want to know how much Dragon knows about this. How much did Kuma tell him when they first met? Because if recent chapters are any indication, it sounds like Dragon, while knowing about Nika, might have been left in the dark about certain details, specifically about the idea that his son might be Nika. I don't know. But it's just got me curious now, even more so, about how much Dragon kind of knows about Nika now versus how much he knew then. Like, it's kind of got me curious about how much, like, Kuma had even told him. But okay. With that said, though, let's talk about the other side of this coin, which is we also learned the horrific truth about God Valley's history, which is that it played host to a brutal and malicious event hosted by the Celestial Dragons, simply known as the Native Hunting Competition, where slaves and local populations of people were hunted and culled for sport. And one who stood out among the crowd back in the day was a young Saint Garling, who in present day now is the Supreme Commander of the God Knights. And this is really painting a picture of just what the inciting incident was behind Zebek invading God Valley, but also just knowing that all this in itself, knowing just what the history is of God Valley and how it's tied to the Celestial Dragons, it does kind of beg the question just what kind of stake Roger had in all this. Like, ultimately, like, again, as it said, ultimately God Valley served as the site of a literal fucking manhunt. So why would Roger, or even Garp for that matter, help in saving this place? Or, again, because the matter remains that both Garp and Roger, even though they were enemies, they shared the same hatred of the Celestial Dragons. Like, for Garp, it was like status as a Marine be damned. He hated those fuckers. What prompted them to act on this? What was it, just because of Zebek? Because, like, it would have. So, like, what? just knowing what God Valley was used for would have made Garp hate them even more. So what? Again, my question is, what was the reasoning behind Garp's and Roger's actions here? Like, the only thing that makes any sense is there's still an unknown factor to God Valley we don't know about as the reader. Something about this place was significant enough for both Roger and Garp to take action against Zebek, even if knowing it meant helping the Celestial Dragons in the process. Which makes me wonder if there's a truth behind God Valley that not even the Celestial Dragons knew. And that in itself just shows and all this in itself just shows even further that the kind of insurmountable odds we're up against, which I know there's that thing of our heroes overcoming anything thrown at them, but if if knowing what happened in the past and present day circumstances are anything to go off of, and just seeing the Straw Hats struggling to survive against Jay Garcia himself, like, this is proof that the Straw Hats are going to need much more than just their trademark luck in order to survive beyond this point. Like, this is the kind of chapter that shows the kind of power we're up against. Like, obviously they are the heroes, and there is going to be some way they survive, but even then, if they do get off Egghead, I'm still not liking their chances beyond this arc unless they actually need to start thinking about how to actually survive, I think, beyond this point. But okay. Let's talk about the other huge reveal with God Valley, which is that this is the place where Kuma met Ivankov for the first time, along with his sister Ginny, which, yeah, right out of the gate, the fact that we haven't met Ginny in the current timeline probably means she's as good as dead. Like, I don't think Ginny's alive in this timeline. Like, the only way I see Ginny being alive is if we come to learn that Ginny survived, but she renamed herself as Betty. I'm basically saying that Ginny is Bello Betty here, but that's really the only. I don't even know how much I trust in that crackpot theory, honestly, because I'm putting more faith in the idea that Ginny is probably dead. That's probably that's probably the most likely scenario, because it would have eventually prompted Ivankov to kind of join hands with Kuma and Dragonor to form the Revolutionary Army. That would have been like a good motivation for him. Now, in terms of the meeting itself, this is kind of interesting because timeline-wise, we know this is 38 years ago from the current storyline, but according to the other part of Kuma's history, the Revolutionary Army wasn't formed until 22 years ago, not long after Ohada's destruction. So, I wonder what happened in that intervening time. Did they remain slaves until the end of the God Valley incident? Like, or did something, or did the whole rocks, or did something else happen in between where they managed to escape before the God Valley incident? Like, because if they remain slaves that long, then there's going to be a lot of ground to cover in terms of what happened. I think here, in terms of like what happened with all this, but I'm sure these are things that we're going to get covered within the next couple chapters, regardless. Of course, we're going to be waiting because manga's on break now. But I will also say, this reveal of how Kuma and Ivankov met does have me wondering more about their history now, because just this one meeting alone adds so much more to what we had heard from Ivankov during Marineford, and how torn he was about when he was told the idea that Kuma gave himself over to the government during Marineford, and how he was arguing fervently with Doflamingo about Kuma wouldn't do that. Kuma's a good man. Like, I do like how this does kind of add a lot more context just to that relationship, but that they did have a genuine friendship, and they did put a lot of trust in each other during their probably lowest moment. And I'll be honest, just in a lot of this, it adds a new flavor to basically to a relationship that honestly I had a really hard time buying into, even knowing that they were both in the Revolutionaries. Like don't get me wrong, the whole idea of of Kuma and of Kuma and Ivankov being friends isn't a bad idea on its face. It's just for the longest time I had a really hard time believing it, only because it was kind of being fed a thrust through that whole like pretty much show don't tell a lot of it. Like obviously again we saw instances of them in the Revolutionary, so there's that, but it's like there wasn't strong enough evidence for me to support the relationship that supposedly like Ivankov had said that they were very dear friends and whatnot. So, but this does add a lot more to that in my opinion. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll, hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of the Night signing off. Later, everyone.